I call the meeting to order at 6:30. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
Trustee Pierce is absent. Trustee Mason.
Here.
Trustee Peterson.
Here.
Trustee Bluthart.
Here.
Trustee Berman.
Here.
Trustee Dominiac.
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Present. No trustees attending remotely today. First item on the agenda is the approval of the February 23rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Is there a motion and a second? So moved. Motion trustee Bluthart,
Second.
second trustee Peterson. Roll call, please.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Bluthart.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. All right, we have a couple mayoral announcements in the beginning of the meeting. One of those is not on the agenda, but I think we should acknowledge or do a quick moment of silence for what's going on in Ukraine. We have residents and family and employees in the office here that have family over there. So again, keep them in your thoughts and prayers and hope for a speedy resolution to that. So just take 10 seconds to reflect on that. All right, thank you. And now, next on the agenda is we have a full house here to acknowledge the Antioch Community High School wrestling team. So again, I have some notes here, and I know a lot about this through neighbor friends of mine. But at the wrestling team was a young team that came together at the end of the season. They finished with a outstanding record of 24-5, second in their conference, second at the Rich High School Invitational, first at the Grays Lake Regional, and overall fourth in the 2A IHSA team tournament. I know there were also several individuals that placed in the individual tournament. So again, I want to congratulate you guys on your achievement. I was at the return from the tournament and saw that you guys brought home some hardware. So I'm sure you guys are able to celebrate with that at some point. And you know, if your coach is inclined, I'm sure we always get a request to put something on one of the signs on the way into Antioch. So again, thank you, and a round of applause for you guys. You can stand up. You can stand up if you're on the wrestling team. You can stand up if you're on the wrestling team. Stand up, stand up, stand up. All right. And then if you guys want to take a team picture or something before we have Jim here with his phone camera, but you guys can come up here and take a picture up by the.
With them.
Now they can come up here and they'll stand behind. Yeah, here. We can all stand up behind you. Here, come up here and take a picture and face that way.
Face the camera.
Ready, wrestle. Get up on here.
Squeeze in, guys.
I'm more worried about you.
Come on over this way, Scott. All right.
I'm gonna be cut out.
All right, congratulations.
Congratulations, guys.
And you guys don't, yeah, coach, you come up here. You get to come up here and say something.
I'm gonna stand
Here, come
over
up
there
here.
so the people on Zoom can
People
hear
on
you.
Zoom want to hear you.
First of all, I'm Wilbur Barrero. I'm the head wrestling coach from Antioch High School. And on behalf of the wrestling team, I really want to thank the city council for inviting us. This is actually the fourth trophy we've brought home since 2012. And the first time we've been invited here. So we really appreciate it. It's an honor. These kids have worked very hard, and we really appreciate the effort you guys took to bring us in here and to make sure that they get recognized. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. And you guys don't have to stick around for the whole meeting. You guys can go celebrate, but we expect the first place trophy next year. Okay, so see you back next year. Parades happen for place trophies.
Nice work. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Did you see the weights on that? Those are the guys that. Those were the
don't wanna mess
small.
You guys
They're
see
individual
this?
small.
I had a glass of water when I stood up. He knocked it over.
Oh, no.
You might be. I was aware we thought all that.
Wasn't for once a week, 3 underneath?
Well, it's changed. It was 185 or 167.
Yeah.
And 185 and everything.
Oh, it cleared the room.
Now they, I think.
All right. Thank you. So if you've seen the agenda, you know we have a long agenda tonight. So if you're presenting or, commenting or for the board, let's try and keep everything as pointed as possible tonight because we have a long committee of the whole meeting. First item on the committee of the whole meeting is are there any citizens here wishing to address the board or anyone on Zoom wishing to address the board? If you're on Zoom, use the little hand raising symbol. If it comes after we start, we will come back to you. But is there anybody going once, going twice? We will have another opportunity during the regular meeting. So the first item on the regular business meeting for the committee of the whole is a request from Grays Lake for a resolution supporting the efforts of the Canadian National Railroad to improve the North Central Service Corridor with the installation of a double-track rail infrastructure to enhance emergency response and reduce vehicle traffic delays in the corridor. Administrator Keim.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you recall, at the last meeting, we considered this resolution in support of the efforts to for CN to create this double track. There were some questions, and we have Mayor Rhett Taylor from Grays Lake and Mike Ellis, who I believe is the village administrator or manager, and they're here to answer some of those questions and give you some more information about this resolution and CN's efforts.
Thank you.
So if you would like to come up, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for inviting us. I sent an email, and I think everyone received it.
There you
So I'd like to thank you for extending an invitation to us this evening. Appreciate the opportunity to come and participate in your board meeting and discuss this resolution. I sent an email earlier and it outlined a variety of points, but just to give some background, Grays Lake, of course, has several train lines that run through it. Earlier this month, we approved a resolution to support an extension of the double track from what would be north of Grays Lake Central High School to Hook Road and Round Lake Beach. Shortly after that meeting, I received an email from a resident who is a multi-generation resident of Grays Lake with a newspaper clipping from the 1920s talking about how train stoppages were causing problems in Grays Lake and how that continued 100 years later. But we all deal with the trains and the stoppages that they cause as Canadian National runs through Lake County. Several years ago, many years ago, they did double tracking and it ended just north of our high school, as I said. And so what happens is sometimes the trains will stop in Grays Lake while a freight train waits for Metro to pass or two freight trains need to exchange. We have grade separation at Washington and then up at Rounds Road and Round Lake Beach. So if they extend their double tracks up to Hook Drive, they could do the train switching where the grade separation is and avoid blocking traffic. And not only does that benefit Grays Lake, but it benefits the 120 corridor because when they block 120 and 83, it impacts Grays Lake and Haynesville and Round Lake Park and Round Lake, depending on how long they're stopped and how much traffic is on 120 at the time. And then it can have negative impacts to the east. And Mayor Henley from Volo always wants people to get quickly from 94 down 120 to the Auto Museum. So he's always talking to me about what can I do to make 120 flow faster. Well, this is a partnership that we can have, and we're asking for help from our neighbors to the north. Canadian National has expressed an interest in doing this and a willingness to pay for it, which is a change. We proposed this to them back in 2017, and they've reached out and said, hey, we're willing to do this. can you gather a resolution support from the towns up and down the corridor? And so that's what we're asking for. Metra is also supported because obviously they're impacted when the freight trains are stopped and not moving. It impacts Metra's ability to move up and down quickly and efficiently. And as the pandemic's ending, Metra expects to experience more normality on their train schedule. So I believe you all received an email with some bulleted talking points and some more details on that. I'm happy to answer questions for you. We have our village administrator here too. He's been with the Village of Grays Lake for more than 30 years and is very, very familiar with these problems and can give you even more history than I can share with you this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Masek.
I think the biggest concern, probably more to the residents, were, I'm familiar with your problems. I'm familiar with everybody wants to go to the old museum. It's just the inconsistency with the railroad that all of a sudden we do this and then we throw more trains up and they get longer. And we got a problem with that. That's just the fear we have.
Right.
So I don't think any of us have a problem doing it. It's just the fear of that situation.
We have no indication from Canadian National that they're going to increase their volume.
They're full of air. So, they didn't say it before, then the trains all of a sudden got 50 cars longer and an engine in the middle. So that's just our fear.
Certainly, I mean, we don't want to see an increase in train volume. I mean, obviously, we're directly impacted. There are points in time where our village is literally shut down, as the trains are stopped. We have a fire department on the east and west side of the train tracks because we need that for emergency response. We're building a police substation on the east side of the tracks now because we need that for emergency response.
We
as
got
well.
a whole subdivision. The train stopped. We have no emergency service at subdivision. So I think a coordinated thing with all the communities, but maybe just the railroad say, something's got to be figured out. You can't throw more trains. That may be a solution, but I don't see an issue other than coordinated writing effort to the railroad company because something's got to be done. Because I've sat at that stoplight, 120, sitting there going, geez, what do I do? I just go down because I know my way around.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly feel your pain, your residents' pain for the stoppages, which is one of the reasons we created the plan to try to provide a way to alleviate it. We've been working with the county. The county Department of Transportation is supportive of this and sees it as effective. 120 and 83, two state routes that we do see as regional as well as municipal, and that 120 is the major artery for the county running from east to west, of course. We do have support with the capital budget from the state for a grade separation at 83 and 120, but of course, the state would need to fund that, and that's probably not going to come rapidly. I do want to recognize that Canadian National is approaching us and working for partnership. So I think that that's the start of what you're alluding to. As we open the store, we'll have an opportunity to work with them and influence them more, as they look to expand nationally. They're looking for municipal support and partners in general. So it is beneficial to them to get support for this type of thing that may help them achieve some of their objectives later on.
Because I think the problem we have is communication with the constituents of Antioch with 173. Why can't we get an overpass? Well, we can't because at a high school, just can't happen. You'd have to take down half the high school. So people just don't understand it. They go, well, yeah, okay, you got $1 billion. Just can't happen. So it's just got to be a coordinated communication effort. I think that's what we got to look at with all the communities involved.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to work with you in a two-step. We do this, and then we work together to negotiate with them to see what they can do to bring the volume down.
Beat up on Facebook for that effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to explain to the residents sometimes that some of it's beyond our control because it's all under interstate commerce and under federal control and not under. So.
Thank you, Trustee Peterson.
I'm just going to mirror Trustee Masek's comments. I have the same comments. So.
Trustee Bluthart?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for coming out, and
You're welcome.
I just see this as an opportunity for us to work with our neighbors and with one voice, and us passing this to help you guys on your project down the road when we have similar issues. We'll come knocking on your door. and
Absolutely.
So on. So I'm fully in support of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Berman?
Aside from what Trustee Masick and Trustee Peterson said, I agree with that, you know, having that concern about them adding more cars. But other than that, I don't think that our town has anything to lose, you know, as far as this goes, you know, other than that.
Trustee Dominiak?
I'm in support of this. I think partnering with you and with the
Thank you.
railroad, I guess in my mind, if the railroad wants to put more cars on, they're not going to care if there's one track or two track. So I think negotiating with them around that is certainly a good idea, but I think I would echo Trustee Blutart's comment about we'll work with you and hopefully more in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'd just like to mention, we have the exact same problem over the border. It goes from 2 tracks to 1 track in Salem. So we have that same slow down switching issue.
Yeah.
So hopefully when we come for the letter from Grays Lake, you guys will sign it and give us your contact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And give us your contact who we need to talk to about a very similar problem.
And we do have a long history of working with the villages to our west on the 120 corridor, and partnering with our neighboring villages for things like, you know, recycling bids, waste management bids. We have a long history of intergovernmental cooperation, so we'd be happy to work with you.
Sure. Thank you. Any other trustee comments? All right. I don't have to move this to the vote for the agenda because I see it's already on the agenda for this evening. So, and I think we're good with the questions from the board on this one. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mayor. All right, next item on the agenda is a artwork proposal for the Ghosted project. We have the All Together group on Zoom. Michael, I think, will be leading the presentation here at Village Hall.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Again, this matter comes before you. As you recall, last autumn, the board conceptually approved a very exciting project with an implementation of a number of historic ghost signs as part of our long-term marketing efforts and as part of our economic development efforts for our downtown. Over the past number of months, we've been working with All Together on some general concepts. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and Rachel is going to walk you through some of the conceptual ghost signs. Right now, we have 5 building owners, including the Village Hall, Village Property, that have agreed to host these interesting pieces of artwork. So I think at this point, Rachel will walk you through the artwork and some of the concepts behind it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, all. Good to see you again. I am going to share my screen and just, I know you have some things in front of you, but just so it's here as well for folks on Zoom. So just some background, you know, we were a part of the marketing effort, and part of the story that we want to tell about Antioch is its history, that it's storied by nature, that it's nostalgic by nature, and that it's evolving. And we really think that this ghost sign project tells a story of all 3 and advances the marketing of the village. This was a main recommendation that came out of the marketing plan, was to celebrate Antioch's character. And we did that this fall through Uncover Antioch, and then building on the stories that we uncovered about all the really interesting properties and businesses that used to be there, we advanced this ghosted proposal. So a ghost sign is an old hand-painted advertising sign that's been preserved on a building for an extended period of time. We want to refresh some existing ghost signs and then design new signs that are inspired by Antioch's past in 5 locations that are painted to look like they've been there forever. So for each location, we dug into the history. I'm not going to read through all this, but I just want you to know we've done our research about all of these locations. So the first is 906 Main Street, which used to be King's Drugstore. We did pull the imagery of what this place used to look like, what their signage was, as well as imagery for what drugstore advertising used to look like if we were looking back in history. So this is the first design and it's shown on its own, as well as what it would look like with a little bit of a kind of old finish to make it look like it's been there for a long time. So for all of these signs, we know that, there's a concern about how do we make it clear that this is an old business and not something that people are going to go looking for. And so all of these were designed with that in mind, to showcase what the business was, but also, that it's not really here anymore, that it was here for 80 years and that it was owned by Frank King, who was the mayor of Antioch in the 1920s. But both the information on the sign and the way it will be painted is meant to emphasize that this is a piece of history that we are bringing back, but also brings color and life to the downtown. So the typefaces in this really connect back to the original design that was there. We've also looked at 888 or 884 Main Street, which is Village Hall. It used to be Snow White's ice cream parlor. We don't have any good images of what this business looked like, but again, we can go back in history and look at what old advertising for ice cream shops looked like, as well as what we can imagine, the business might have been as Snow White's ice cream parlor. And so this is the concept for that location. We want to recognize that this is, people driving through Antioch are going to see the sign. We want them to know they're approaching downtown Antioch, but it's also a great opportunity to just have something playful. These lovely little 7 dwarf ice cream cones are telling the story of this place that used to be there, but also, make you smile and make you maybe want to stop and see what's happening in downtown Antioch. I know there was a lot of interest in putting the village, having this be a big village logo. As someone who helped design the revised logo, I love that idea, but I also want you all to imagine and understand that your brand is more than just your logo. And this is a way to bring people into downtown Antioch and bring some color and levity to this wall that's a little bit of an eyesore right now. We also have 892 Main Street, which used to be Taylor Shoes, along with many, many other shoe stores in its past. So we have a good imagery of what the logo for Taylor Shoes used to look like, as well as some other imagery we use as inspiration to design a new sign for this place. This is one where, Something Sweet is an amazing business in downtown. We don't want to take away from them. We want to add some character to this building. And so the sign really emphasizes that, this brick building housed shoe stores for over 50 years. And so that's a piece of history we want to highlight. We also have talked about there being QR codes that could be next to these signs that bring you to a website that explain the history. So you can learn more about the initiative as well as the businesses at each location. And I know that's something that the library and the Historical Society have also been talking about and working on. The next location is the back of 877 Main Street, which is now PM&L Theater. It used to be the Crystal Theater as early as 1911, as well as the Lakes Theater. We have imagery of this amazing sign. I know that there's also been interest by PM&L to recreate this sign in some way, as well as taking inspiration from other theater signage. We're looking at this back wall of the theater, particularly because it's so visible from the band shell, that we want to bring some character to this space. And so we have a recreation of the Crystal Theater, but we also want to highlight that it's been a theater for a really long time, and it's still a theater, and that's really unique for a small town to have an active theater in your downtown. So now the Palette Mask and Lara Theater since 1982. So again, telling the story of the history and getting people excited about that. The last one is Gamble's Home Appliance Store. This is one of the few ghost signs that's still really visible as you're coming into downtown Antioch. We have great imagery of what the signage for Gamble's looked like, but we also did some more research on what does it mean to be a home appliance store? What else would they have sold and featured at this location? We also have been in contact with Paul Eckhart, whose father owned and ran the store, and he's really excited about this initiative. And so we want to just brighten up and emphasize the sign that's there right now, and then connect it to the other side of this building, and highlight that it was a hardware and appliance store established in 1934, closed in 1972, and then some other decorative elements that highlight as a hardware and appliance store, they also probably made keys, and something to just bring a little bit of life to this building. So I'm going to open it up to questions to talk about these designs, but I just want to also share next steps where after we get approval to move forward from you, we want to share these concepts with the property owners. They have approved that they're excited to have something on their building, but we want to make sure they're happy with the design. We also plan to go out next week and inspect the properties with the building official to review the status of the brick and get some more accurate measurements. And then we plan to share the final artwork with Right Way Signs. They're a hand-painted sign company that does ghost signs. We also want to work with the village communication staff to market the initiative and help tell the story of why we're doing this. The painting we're hoping will start in May and be finished in early June. So with that, I'm going to close my presentation and open it up to questions.
First, trustee Masek.
I like the ghost signs. The only thing I'd like to stay out of is current name brands like Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola kind of gets into politics. And we don't want a sign where all of a sudden we get on the edge of politics and we're all of a sudden on their politics, not being the hometown. Or we got a restaurant next where they're trying to promote their Pepsi brand, and we're the village of Coca-Cola. I'd like to stay off name brands. Gambles is fine; they're out of business. Kings are out of business. That's fine. Or Woolworths, that Woolworths wasn't here, but you're missing the big one that everybody talks about is Ruiz drugstore, which those pictures are all around. But I just. Any name brand out there, why give them free advertisement? It just doesn't make sense.
I don't know that we have
Coca-Cola. Very political, very political.
We don't have Coca-Cola in any of the concepts.
I just see one. I just see one in my packet. A Coca-Cola sign.
It might have been an inspiration photo we pulled to look at typography, but it's not anything that we're planning on putting up. And Reeves Drugstore was a location that we were interested in. We talked to the property owner, but didn't get approval to move forward with that property. And also felt like King's Drugstore is also a great story and a visible location, and felt like one drugstore was probably enough for this round of the initiatives. It could be something that you add to in the future.
All right, thank you. Trustee Peterson.
I truly am excited about this initiative. I love it. To see these ghost signs come back, especially Gamble's. I grew up looking at Gamble's palette, mask, and lair. I have a question about that one. It says since 1982. I was to a play there in the 1960s, so they've been around longer than 1982.
Yeah, that one. They've been in that building since the 80s. And so we've gone back and forth on whether we're saying that palette, mask, and lyre has been there since, like whether we're saying how long the organization has been around versus they've been in that building. So we can maybe tweak the language on that and make it more clear, because there's two different dates when we're looking up the history of PM&L in that building.
But I very much like the proposal. I'm looking forward to seeing it finished.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bluthart.
I was a little, I'm going to be very frank. I was very disappointed with these, actually. I didn't like the color choices. I didn't like the artwork. I thought it was I think it will take away from our downtown more than help it. I love the idea of the ghost signs, but I think these are over the top. The ice cream has no relevance to Antioch at all, and it takes up over half that sign, and I feel like I'm going to a drive-in in 1960 or something. I mean, it doesn't, I really was hoping that these were going to come through differently. And I was not pleased with the way they did come in, but it sounds like I'm in a minority here, but I'd like to see some changes on these before we move forward. Especially with the downtown Antioch one and the color choices. And was there a reason these oranges and browns were used? And a lot of these are the pink and the PM&L
Yeah, they're the colors from the brand guide that we did from Antioch. And so we're happy to play with the colors if you feel like those are something that's bothering you.
Well, it is to me, and it's just something that when I saw them, I was very hopeful for it, and it just was very, I just didn't care for them that much. I think it would, some of these, I mean, based on the size of them, especially the Crystal Theater PML one is huge, and it just the color choices and how it would look back there, I think it takes away from what we're trying to do. I mean, the Gambles one, I love that because it actually is on the building now, and you're kind of mimicking it. And some of these, but you know, like the ice cream, for example, it would make sense for me to put that on the place that sells ice cream, not on the big, large village one. But like I said, I'm probably in a minority on this, but I like the idea of it. I like the idea of doing the signs, but I'm just not crazy about what was proposed.
I appreciate your input.
Trustee Berman.
I do have a question. As far as, because I know these are imposed digitally.
Mhm.
And I know you stated that you guys were trying to keep it so that it was on the brighter side to add some color. Do you anticipate that once these are actually done by hand, do you think that they're going to be lighter than what we're seeing on the computer?
Yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
think that that's part of what we're looking for the sign painter to do, is to kind of paint it in a way that you're still getting a lot of the brick coming through.
Okay.
And that's hard to do in Photoshop, but that is the goal of having them be applied in a way where they look like they've been faded.
And then as far as the edges too, and I don't like to use the word grungy, but that's what I'm thinking of as far as like Photoshop. Is there a way to maybe make some of the borders on there maybe a little less intact?
Yeah,
More
for
way,
sure.
more
So
so.
they look like they're older.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's really good feedback and something that we can, when we start working with the sign painting company, like work with them on some of those details and like how do we take these and paint them in a way where it does look older. And I think we'll rely on their expertise for that.
And I know Trustee Bluthart doesn't like the ice cream, but I think as far as for kids, I think it's welcoming for kids. I think it's cute. So I like it.
Thank you. Trustee Dominiac.
Trustee Bluthart, you're not alone. My notes, these are not historic colors, correct? And if we're putting this in our wonderful historic downtown Antioch, I think we should be looking at colors that are more historic and fit with the time of the buildings if we're trying to convey what was there before. So that's the first thing. In terms of the PM&L Theater, I would agree with Trustee Peterson. I understand what you're saying about that they haven't been, they were elsewhere, but we're not advertising that building, we're advertising the theater. So I'd like to see us go back to the days when Mary went there as a toddler.
What you were saying again?
Welcome to downtown Antioch. I'll be candid, like Trustee Bluthart. When I saw that, I immediately thought of when you go to the movies and they have all the little dancers come across saying, let's go to the lobby to get your popcorn and everything else. I would much rather see this just say, welcome to historic downtown Antioch, and take the reference to the Snow White's ice cream parlor and the ice cream people off of that. I think it's too busy. I don't think it fits with what we're trying to do with the downtown. And if nothing else, the colors just don't fit, in my estimation, for the historic look of downtown. Trustee Peterson, you mentioned Gamble's. Are these colors, is this color what it was
Yeah.
years ago? It's that green color?
Yes.
So
it was.
faded, it would be okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Peterson. And then the back of the PMNL Theater, I like that, although I think it's a little too much because when I look at it, I kind of think of Las Vegas. But I think that's also the style of the Crystal Theater back in the day with the lights. I can't remember, whatever you call those lights. But the north side of that building is so ugly. I'm sorry, but when they added on, they have two different colors in that building. Is there something that we can do back there? And I know we'd have to talk to them about that because they own the building, but if we're looking at people coming south on 83, you see this big, huge wall. It really has nothing other than a couple colors on it. So I'd like us to kind of think about, is there something we could do there? I do like the idea of having it in the back so that people are at the band shell, et cetera. And I'm not saying that we should paint the whole building, but perhaps there's something that we could do there as well. So I think more work is needed on these and to get to more historic colors. And I'm sorry, Trustee Berman, but the ice cream just is too kitschy for me. It's not, it doesn't look like downtown Antioch to me. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. So I when I saw these, I know I was on the call when we first went through these, and I know we went and spent a lot of money on the branding, and I think these are signs that are going to hopefully last 20 years or more. And I don't know how much our 2022 branding message is going to resonate in 2040. So I would be of the preference of going with more historical colors of what would be on those buildings at the time. And then I just have one other question about this. So are these renderings, I'm assuming the marketing team came up with the renderings. Were the artists that will be putting these together, did they have input on these, or were these from the marketing group as well?
These are from us. The sign painting team aren't able to engage until they have final artwork. And once there's final artwork, they can give their input on it. But kind of from a time perspective for them, they've been hesitant. They've given us a quote and they put us on their schedule, but they have pretty much said, once your artwork is final, then let's talk. So I definitely, sounds like there's agreement, and let's play with the colors and adjust those. And I'm totally fine with that. But the conversations with the sign painters, I think, need to happen once the artwork is final.
Okay, thank you. One more pass around, and then I think village staff will probably be having one more call with the marketing group to come back with some renderings, hopefully quickly here, because we're hoping to get this done sooner than later. So Trustee Masek.
Yes, sir.
Oh, did you have any more comments or? Okay, Trustee Peterson.
Just one comment on the Gambles to answer Mary's question. If you look at the picture of the Gambles hardware store or Gambles on the building that exists now, that was more of a very dark green compared to this light green that you've got showing. It would be, I think it would be great to just replace that sign the way it was and, make it.
It's like a hunter's green.
Yeah, like hunter green. That's
Mhm.
what it was. That was the
Yeah, that would be
original.
nice.
So just go darker with that, but the sign itself is great. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Trustee Bluthart.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting there. I just would like to see some other alternatives. And I guess I had one question. Were these your, like, the ideas that you guys came up with immediately and just stuck with, or do you have different versions that you came up with and this is what you guys decided was what you wanted to present? Especially like the Village of Antioch one where you said there was a version with the logo. Do you have a version like that that you could show us as well?
Yeah, I don't have that handy right now, but I could dig around and find it in my files. But yes, we went through a round of revisions with village staff, showing a few different options. And these were the options that we refined based on their feedback. So we're happy to go back to the drawing board for some of them, or back to older concepts where it feels
Yeah, I
appropriate.
mean, I personally, I would like to see some, I mean, some of these, we probably all are agreement are like the gambles. Maybe a color change or something like that, but everyone seems to like that. There's some of these that we might be able to agree on right away. There's others like the Village of Antioch one that I'd like to have some more discussion on and see some other alternatives. And then maybe proceed with that. So I know you'd like to get approval on all of them at one time, but maybe we need to approve what we can and work on others. But once again, I'm just one. So that's all.
Trustee Berman,
No other comment.
trustee Dominiac.
Just reflecting again on trustee Berman's comment, and my thoughts about the PM&L Theater, the north elevation there. And considering that we're going to be spending a lot of money to put a park, maybe what we could do is take the ice cream people off of the downtown Antioch logo on the village hall, or whatever this building is going to be down the road. And maybe do something on that side of the building later on that would be kind of a mural that might have some things that are more for kids and families, that would be a different kind of art, other than ghosts, but would be a focal point when you're in the park looking north. So it's just a thought. Might be able to accomplish a couple things.
Yeah, if I can, just to note there, we talked to the property owner who owns, I don't know the address off the top of my head, but the property that it faces the Pittman property right there, and she is planning on doing a mural there as well. And we had talked to her about doing sort of a greetings from Antioch, old style postcard type thing. And I think she's still planning on moving forward that, but wanted to have some more creative license to do what she wanted. So there are conversations for artwork to happen on not the back of the PM&L Theater, but the property that's immediately adjacent.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I agree with trustee Bluthart. I'd like to see some other option.
Any other questions? All right, so next time around, we'll do some revisions. So thank you for coming on here and doing this presentation.
No problem. Thanks all.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is presentation of the salary study that was done by our HR consultant. Hampton will present that for us.
But we're still gonna have that noise.
What if you put it up on the dais?
That jostled too much. Just in the wrong way.
Got it. It's better. You want to move over here and use mine?
No, I am saying with these ads. Burping. The wires are all.
That's what I'm saying.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. Don't move.
No, I just turned.
Oh.
But for the Zoom, until we go around, will you just
loose change.
move Ed's microphone towards you so people online?
I just disabled it.
Oh, you got it?
What do you want me to do?
Share your mic.
There we go.
Testing.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Kathy Lampkin, and I'm the HR consultant for Antioch. As you know, it's become increasingly difficult to attract candidates for positions in today's market. You've probably seen in a lot of places help wanted signs. You've seen where people have had to close down because they don't have enough employees and et cetera. So we at Antioch obviously want to be sure that we can attract the candidates that we need. We want to, most importantly, too, to be able to retain the employees that we have and to be able to have internal and external equity. And with saying that, in your packet, you had a memo reminding you that there was a board that you discussed in 2019, the methodology that was needed to determine what our salary ranges would be here at Antioch, those minimums and the maximums, and they were based upon comparable communities. You talked about COLA increases, talked about adjustments for employees to be able to be placed in those ranges so that there was equity for our employees. But unfortunately, that 3-year implementation plan that was done in 2019 has still caused Antioch employees to be further behind in their pay. And what I want to just make sure we understand and talk about this evening is not necessarily anything that has to do with what employees get in terms of merit or COLA increases. What we're talking about this evening is the issue of the ranges and the placement of employees in those ranges based on years of experience here at Antioch. So for example, the minimum of a salary range is what you would, the least you would pay someone who's minimally qualified for a position. And the maximum of the range is what the maximum is that you pay that employee based on their experience, not the performance, not how well they do, but it's based on placement within their range. So we said back in 2019, we would do a salary study every 3 years. We want to be able to make sure that we're being competitive with our market. And so a new salary study was conducted in 2022. We sent out salary surveys to the comparable communities that were established in 2019. We reviewed job descriptions. When there were no comparable jobs, we were looked at publicsalary.com. We did the average of the maximum of the comparable salaries when we calculated the ranges. The new maximum of the ranges were established. And one of the things also that we looked at was where the minimum of the range was. And we are looking at 70% because again, we want to be sure to attract candidates to come in and be paid what they need to be paid to be able to work here. The placement in the ranges we also looked at were those that weren't at the minimum. If you decide to do 70% of the maximum, those that aren't at the minimum would be moved to the minimum. This does not affect a lot of the employees we have already hired because we've had to hire them actually higher in the range anyway, just because the minimum of our ranges was too low. Those with 10 years or more would be brought to the midpoint, and those that are 5 to 9 years here would be brought between the minimum and the midpoint of the new range. One of the things I think you also need to think about is that if most unions to get through a range is 4 to 6 years on average. I mean, our police union here is the same. For our non-union folks, though, we're looking at sometimes it can be 15 years before they could get to their maximum. And so I think it's important to think about treating all of our employees as much as we can equally and be sure that there's internal equity. Please again, remember that we are not talking about the person. We're talking about positions and placement within those ranges. So based on that, I wanted, is there any questions regarding why we decided to do this, what we have come up with, and some of our recommendations?
Trustee Masek?
This is needed. I mean, we got a lot of great people working here. You don't want to lose talent. And each family now is costing $2,000 more to live. So, I'm looking at these figures that the little we're giving them, we're just basically making them break even. So, the first time this was done when I was on here, we brought people up that were very underpaid for what they were doing for work. So looking at this is for what some people do down here, this is well justified.
Thank you. Trustee Peterson?
I tend to agree. That's all I have to say.
Trustee Bluthart?
It's a lot to take in, but I really don't have any specific questions at this time. That all makes sense to what I've been presented.
Thank you. Trustee Berman?
No questions.
Trustee Dominiac?
I have no questions. Very clear. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. All right. Next item, sticking with the numbers, is a capital discussion led by Administrator Keim.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we've reworked the capital plan. Capital is defined in here. I'm not going to read the document to you. You have a couple of pages that I think you should spend some time to read, which kind of defines capital. Please stop me at any time if you have questions. But in general, capital is going to be your brick and mortar stuff. We define it as things that cost more than $20,000 that have a lifespan to them. Certainly your road paving can be considered capital. Park infrastructure improvements can be considered capital. Sometimes we struggle with some higher dollar amounts that kind of feel like maintenance activities. Sometimes I feel like that with the road program, it's kind of maintenance to the road, but we can classify it by the accounting standards as capital improvements, and we usually put the road program in there. In the past, we put vehicle replacement programs in here, but again, those feel more like just maintenance activities to rotate our fleet. But the dollar amount gets big on some of that stuff, so we typically will consider it in the capital plan. Really, what I wanted to focus, my objective here was to get a more relevant capital plan that has a shot of getting implemented with identified funding sources and things that we think are possible. As opposed to some of the previous capital plans, which had some projects that had no identified funding, nobody's working on them. The numbers move from year to year, and it just, to me, it was losing relevancy, and it was less of a plan and maybe more of a wish list. This plan also has kind of a wish list at the end on the bottom, and we could add, projects. If you think of projects that should be on this, please, we can add as many as you like, but I really want to focus on the projects that we've ranked that keep coming up over in conversation and in the public's viewpoint, that you'll hear about on Facebook and whatever. And let's try to make some progress, identify where the money's coming from, and let's do them. I think I've heard several of you say, hey, let's do some projects that have been talked about. But please take some time to read. It'll give you some more information about what we're doing with capital planning, why we do it. But it's basically to give you a longer term picture of what's possible in as far as capital goes. Can you go to the next slide? You have this spreadsheet in your packet. You also have a paper copy for the public's benefit. I thought it was just handy to show a few of the spreadsheets in this capital plan. The top projects, and I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's about 13 things listed. Some of
What page are you on?
I'm on page 7 of the paper document.
Thank you.
Some of those kind of go hand in hand. I have Grimm Road and Grimm Road Utilities as separate projects, but they really go hand in hand. There's a Centegra purchase and a Village Hall project. Those obviously go hand in hand. But the timing and of the purchase and or when these things happen or how they get funded could be different. So this is, I put them in order of how the board ranked these. That's the order they're in right now, from top to bottom. There's a couple of programs maybe that you didn't, projects that you didn't necessarily rank. And we can talk about those. The Park Master Plan is something we have never truly done. There's been some planning efforts in the past, but there's really never been a mile high look at our parks and, you know, what is the priority? I've heard different suggestions for improvements in parks, but should we really kind of consider, you know, prioritize all the different needs and things in the parks that may need to be improved or updated or brought up to current code? Yeah. So I think it'd behoove us to have a plan for that, to, you know, as we want to improve our parks, have some kind of prioritized way to do that. The bottom one there, North Avenue Quiet Zone upgrade, you know, this is to maintain the no train whistles through town quiet zone from State Line to Lake Cook Road. Every 5 years, the FRA recertifies the quiet zone. The whole zone, the entirety of the zone is scored. And this renewal, this evaluation showed many deficiencies that jeopardized the quiet zone. And one of them is in our village, and we're expected to cover an expense to improve that grade crossing at North Avenue by installing new barrier curbs. I don't view it as something you have much of a choice on unless you want to make every village along the quiet zone upset with us, because they wouldn't just not blow horns in Antioch. They would blow horns. They would blow their horns the entire zone. So I think it's, you know, when we signed up for the quiet zone way back when, we knew that eventually there could be costs involved in maintaining the quiet zone and maintaining safety at the grade crossings. It's a pretty good number. We agreed to use the same engineer to design all the improvements. They'll all be bid countywide. I think there's 11 or 12 improvements and crossings, and we're being bid in bulk as part of it's all cooperative effort. Is there any questions about projects you're seeing, or projects maybe you're not seeing, or how they're ranked? Because that really is kind of a starting point. Okay, next slide. Trustee.
I have a question.
Sure.
We don't have the sawmill on here, and I know there's been some conversation about taking care of that. And then I don't know if this is within the next 5 years, but at some point we need to revisit Lake Michigan water, particularly if we're having problems with our wells. And I think personally, we might want to have a discussion. I'm not suggesting we do that right now, but about the order of this, because I think our well water is really more important than some of these other things that are on here for the public health.
Yeah. And let's spend a little bit of time and look at that one. That one got a variety of different rankings. So, you know, we had to notice the public about an excursion to the iron content there. We think it was an anomaly. I don't want anyone thinking that there's something seriously wrong with the water out of well 5, because I don't believe there is. Iron is a secondary standard. It's an aesthetic standard, not necessarily a health concern, but as you know, it can dim your white clothes. It can stain your fixtures. Well 5 is consistently tested for as long as anyone can remember at the exact same level it's testing today. Nothing changed of the quality of that water. In my mind, it's more of a perceived issue than a real health issue. You know, I guess we prefer not to have as much iron in the water. All of our wells have iron. This one has a little bit higher levels of iron. You know, it typically tests at about 1.2 or 1.3. The limit is 1. And it's tested consistently there the entire time. Why exactly the EPA chose to call it out in 2022 when it's been this way for 40 or 50 years, you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of spotlights on water supplies and lead issues and other issues. So I think there's just a heightened scrutiny on these types of things. But I don't want anybody to think that there is a huge problem with well 5. It is a problem with the EPA, and it is a problem with perception, because they have informed us that if we operate the well and use it in production, right now it's out of production, that every time it tests at 1.2, just outside of the limit, they're going to make us notice the residents. It means the residents will get notices on a regular basis. And that's just going to become a perceived issue, which, as you know, if it's perceived, it's a real issue.
Well, and I'll give you that it may not be a public health issue, but I think perception is important. And I think it just speaks to the bigger picture of, you know, what's our long-term water source. And we haven't looked at that in well over 5 years. And I don't know how long that allocation is good for. We've never gotten a straight answer on that from the previous administration. So maybe we could.
As far as I know, it's still good. But yeah, could it be, if we don't do anything toward getting, using that allocation to get Lake Michigan water here, that allocation, there are other communities that really want allocation, and we're not using it.
And again, I don't want to dominate the conversation about Lake Michigan water, but I'd like it somewhere for us to start talking about it, because Lindenhurst did it, and we're a bigger community with a lot more opportunities for revenue than Lindenhurst. So I'd like to just have that as a topic of conversation, perhaps, Your Honor, at another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. But the approach, I think, and I think we need to take a look at the water system in general. I think it's a good thing. We've never really done an evaluation of the water system. And you know, knock on wood, we've been very lucky that we've had a good supply of water. You know, and we just haven't had a lot of issues, other than, you know, there is some hardness to the water. There's some mineral in it. But we've seen other things happen in the industry. PFAS is now an issue. And I know it is PFAS. It's Teflons and plastics that are starting to show up in water supplies and are beginning to be regulated throughout the US. It's in firefighting foam, and it's in other certain things. We had trace amounts detected in well 7. We tested, you know, when we get that, we have to retest and it goes away. But, you know, limits of 1 or 2, when we think, you know, the standard or the limit really is going to be somewhere in that 10 range, based on what other states are doing. We think we're going to be well below limits on that. However, I think it's something to keep an eye on. And then we have a well that's, you know, well 3 that is near a landfill and has had detection of VOCs. So, you know, just looking ahead, you know, should we take a, you know, not just a look at well 5 and how to rectify well 5, should we take a look at the water system and think of, you know, what other strategies can be employed to take a well offline? What if we had to take 2 wells offline if we saw higher levels get detected, you know? So I think the first step in this would be an evaluation of the water system, and what can we do? Do we need well 5? Do we not need well 5? We have a lot of production out east in the clublands. You know, what would it take to get, we have 2 deep wells and a shallow well there that were built for a lot more homes that are there or are going to be there. You know, bringing that capacity back to town may be an option for us. And maybe we don't need to drill a new well. You know, I think it needs to be looked at. So step 1 in this, I think, would be a water system evaluation, focusing on these types of things.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm skipping ahead to page 9. So this question's been asked a couple of times. How are we going to pay for all these projects? Where's the money coming from? So this spreadsheet is meant to identify the funding sources. You have cash.
I think the wrong slide is up.
Yeah, we got to go back one. Thank you. So this I call my game of Sudoku. I'm sitting here plugging in project costs and possible sources, and there's no magic to this. Some of these numbers fit very nicely into the project. ARPA would be one. ARPA fits very nicely into a stormwater project. We just happen to have a massive stormwater project across the street where that money could be used. Money could be used in other ways, sure. However, we happen to, to have a project that's highly ranked in this village and, is possibly going to need this funding. And I'm recommending that's what you do with your ARPA allotment. In addition to some grant money we've been promised and combined with a bond sale, a bond issuance. So this is just meant to answer that question. Where is the money coming from to fund these projects? This is aggressive. The total on there is over $40 million. I'm pretty certain I know where about 30 million can come from. There's another 10 million here that, maybe we need to explore more grants. Maybe there's another bond sale that could be looked at. Or we need to find a way to save cash. And you are in a good position because you see we are utilizing cash. Now, keep in mind, we still have reserves we're not going to touch. And we don't need operational cash. So I wouldn't be comfortable going under $1.5 million in our checking account. So to cover out of phase expenses. But keeping, those that reserve in place and the operating cash in place, you still have fund balance that could be spent. I would advocate you spend it on capital, not operations, because operational, capital is typically going to be a one-time thing. If you start spending cash on operational things, when that cash is gone, those parts of the operation are in jeopardy. So that's my recommendation. We've done a good job over the years of spending within our means and built up some cash. And you now have an opportunity to use that on some of the projects that I think you want to do. Does anybody have any questions about this one? I would really focus on the top half of this chart and try to make headway on those projects that you can do. Some of these other projects that rank a little bit lower may take a little more time, or we may need to find a little bit extra money. As we find money for these projects, and let's go to the next slide.
Jim, what's the upper northern boundary of the central business district?
I believe it goes to the state line.
Okay.
We tried to capture all commercial along both corridors. So it's extensive.
Okay.
I have a map in my office though.
Yeah, I know you've got BD cash for the upgrade. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The grant dollar amounts you list on here, are those grants that we've obtained or those grants you're hoping to obtain?
That's a great question. Both answers. On the top grant, that 2.75 has been awarded by SMC. And we're getting the grant from the state through SMC. We're actually getting the grant from SMC. SMC got the money from the state. SMC doesn't have the money from the state yet, although I'm told it's been appropriated. And I'm told that money is going to get here. So I have a higher level of confidence we're going to get that money. It's going to be available for use for this project. Below that, we talked about applying for some grants for Grimm Road. Those are in application phase. We have not been awarded anything. That's money we hope to get. If we don't get it, we'll either have to change funding sources. And that's really a thing you got to keep in mind here. Think about flexibility here. If we don't get the money in one place, we'd have to think about a different place to get it. And every year we should have a conversation like this and say, okay, well, this happened and this didn't. But we can run through them. BD cash.
It might be helpful just to list them in separate columns for grants that we've obtained or we're waiting on funding for versus ones that we are aware of that we could apply for. Because that would show us what we've got versus or should have versus what we might have or hope to have.
Yeah, and there's two $600,000 grants that we have been listed in a bill, you know, it has not made its way from DCEO into a grant agreement for us to look at and sign and turned real yet. In those projects, I've pushed out a little bit. I don't know when we'll get those monies. But if we get them, we can slide those projects up and accelerate them. But BD cash is your business district cash. You know, I have $2.125 million of cash you have that money. That's here. More than that, actually. You probably have about $3 million, and every month that number goes up. So as time goes on, there's going to be some cash accumulated there that can help with these projects. Sewer and water cash. You have $3.5 million. Now that, I'm a little worried about that number. I have it on the page. I put it there, but that would be burning a lot of, nearly all of your sewer and water cash. I don't know if I'm fully comfortable with that. I may modify this. It's a draft at this point, but you do have that cash. I don't know that I want to spend that much cash. I may look for alternatives to that. The ARPA money you have, or you have half of it today, and we're scheduled to get the other payment in July. We have no reason to think that it won't come. General fund cash. Yeah, you do have that much cash available in general fund. Again, not touching reserves. The grant money we just talked about. Bond, I got a $21 million. You know, I'm hoping that the village will qualify for a revenue bond of approximately $21 million to affect this plan. And that would be serviced with future business districts. So that's going to leverage how much cash you will build in the future on business districts, because you'll be paying off a loan. Motor fuel tax comes to, right now, it's about $600,000 a year. I believe you will have that over 5 years. That's $3 million. I believe you have that money. And the Rebuild Illinois money you have already today.
You know, I think the state has grants for parks. Might want to look into that. I remember reading something in the paper about another community that got a grant for parks, and CDBG maybe next year.
We have nothing that qualifies for CDBG. We have no low to moderate income in the village, believe it or not. Years ago we did. I was very surprised when we looked at census tracts. I'll look again to make sure nothing changed. But we've been out of the CDBG grant for a while now, because we have no low to mod in any census tract here, which is surprising. We've talked about, you know, I watched the State of the Union and heard about a lot of infrastructure talk and money that may be coming to fund infrastructure. The mayor and I have talked about maybe grant writer. You know, how do we get our piece of the pie when all this money is being talked about nationally? And I'm sure it'll be distributed to states, and states may distribute it to counties and maybe to municipalities. I think it's something we should consider is, you know, how do we get some money from other grants? But the next spreadsheet I want to show you here on page 10, same projects. Now I'm just distributing those costs over the years. So this is your 5-year CIP, really. This is it. As funding becomes available, projects could, you know, if the Holbeck Crest sanitary sewer, $600,000 showed up tomorrow, I would accelerate that project to the left. We try to bid it this year. If we don't get it by, you know, whatever, I think I threw it in year 26, it'll move to 27. At some point, if the money doesn't look like it's ever going to show up, we'll have to spend cash and do it. And it's hard right now to know exactly, you know, how much money will be spent on the park across the street in 24 or 25. You know, I'm making some guesses when I think the majority of work would be done. But those numbers will change from year to year as we learn more about the actual costs. You know, do I know that remodeling a building into a village hall will cost $3 million? No, I don't. We could tell an architect to back into the number. Maybe the project's 2 million, maybe the project's 4 million. I don't know, but we got to start somewhere and put a number on the page. And so I'm just throwing a number in there, but we'll learn more about that in the months and years to come. And almost all of these projects. Any questions on these?
Sure, there's a lot. Just as an aside, for the board and for staff and the public, when we do our next quarterly meeting, beautification plan, and this plan will be the main topic of conversation for those days working through this. So that will be, we have some time to study up on it, probably a month or a month and a half and then that will be the topic. So with that being said, I'll entertain any other questions for Jim at this point. Ed, did you have any questions? Mary,
No, I have no.
Brent,
Not at this time.
Katrina, Mary?
Just want to thank you for doing this.
yeah.
You'll
For
see-
our request.
Yeah, you'll see project description pages, and then I just want to quickly go to the next slide. Just a little preview on roadway.
Hmm.
So this is what we've done as far as paving projects. And you can see a bar chart. We've paved different mileages. About the most we've ever done is about 3.25 miles, I believe. In some years, I don't think we did any roads. There were a couple lean years where we didn't do roads at all, but you've made some significant progress in road paving. And then the next slide, please. This is a recent condition survey. By color, we have ranked all the roads 1 to 10. There was a time years ago where the 1s and 2s, the really bad roads, were a big piece of that pie chart. You can barely see the 1s and 2s anymore. And I'm pretty sure last year we paved the 1s. So, we're now focusing on yellow. On this map, we're going to focus on yellow roads. Those are condition 3. Those are roads that are bad condition, and those are the ones we resurface. 4 and above are usually roads you're okay with, and they can last a few more years. I hope to present a list of roads to you at the next meeting and get a head start, as we've done in previous years, on bidding these ahead of the budget approval. So just as a preview, I wanted to kind of give you an idea about roads, conditions, and what we've done in the past. This year, I'm proposing about a $600,000 program, but I'll know more by the next meeting. And purple's a really good condition road.
Good condition?
Yeah. The periwinkle and the cyan and the magenta, those are really good. Green and blue, those are really good roads.
That's impressive colors. Those.
The orange, we typically don't pave a lot of orange roads. Sometimes we do if we're in a subdivision that is yellow and orange. Sometimes we pave some orange roads. But I want to be paving more of the yellow roads at this point. Bowles Road has a lot of yellow on it.
It's bright yellow.
A bright yellow.
When is that map of? Or what date was that?
These are
'Cause it looks like Deer Path, which I live on, was done, but you have it in yellow.
Yeah, we picked off a lot of the yellow roads last year. This has not been updated. It's currently being,
It's not updated.
it's not currently updated. But by the next time this comes back around, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on that. Thank you. And even though she's not here, we'll thank Zeta, because that was one of her going out the door projects, right? That she was working on. Yeah, Joy and Zeta. Yeah. All right. Next item on the agenda is continued discussion regarding the Antioch Theater. Michael Garrigan will lead that discussion, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This matter does come before you this evening. As you recall, maybe several months ago, we had a presentation between the prospective purchaser, Linda Monty, who's actually here presently, and Mr. Downey, who's the current owner of the Antioch Theater. Staff was directed to continue to work with Mr. Downey and the prospective purchaser to look at several different financing options. As you well know, the Antioch Theater has been a long institution in our downtown. We consider it really one of the economic anchors to the downtown, along with some of our PM&L theater and some of our major restaurants and other businesses. The board did articulate quite strongly, I think there was a consensus that, directing staff to do everything possible to try to maintain and make sure the theater continues to be a institution in downtown Antioch. So based on that direction, over the past several months, the staff has been working with the applicant, specifically Ms. Monty and Mr. Downey, to try to find some creative different options for financing. So what we have tried to present this evening is really two simplified options. I present an option 1, which is clearly the option that the prospective purchaser, Ms. Monty, is actually here this evening. She'll kind of walk you through her pro forma, and this is option 1. is what she has made quite clear is what would allow her to operate the theater and then make it a ongoing prosperous business. Option two, which I'll walk through, is an option that staff has been exploring over the past several months with some of our local banks. Both options, based on the facts of the ground, is that the village would take the lead, potentially theoretically in financing it. Whether the board supports that, that's a separate question. That's really a policy question. But clearly, based on our discussions with several banks in town, they made it quite clear that they had no interest in financing a private purchase unless somebody can come with extensive capital. Somebody could come down with 60-70% capital, upfront cost, they might consider it, but without that, they would not consider a private loan, which is consistent with what Mr. Downey represented at the last meeting. That's consistent with our discussions with several banks in our community. So I wanted to walk you through these two options. We have a PowerPoint, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Monty to allow her to walk through her proposed pro forma and what she's proposing. Again, the first option is it would be a village finance approximately $375,000. Based on our amortization, it would be a 20-year amortization at 2% interest. There would be approximately a monthly payment back to the village of approximately $1,667. There would be the village board reimposed ticket tax. As you know, there was previously a ticket tax on the theater. That ticket tax was eliminated a number of years ago. I think the ticket tax initially refunded the renovation. As you know, there was an extensive renovation of the theater when Mr. Downey purchased it. So this ticket tax would be reimposed. There would be a 1% tax for movies, and there would be a 2% tax for future live entertainment. I'll allow Ms. Monty to kind of walk you through some of her different concepts for additional live entertainment venues. There would be this proposed projected ticket tax based on the pro forma would generate approximately $3,000 per month. So there'll be potentially a payoff to the village between 10 to 12 years based on our analysis of amortization. Now, option two is what staff worked on specifically, is where the village would work with a local bank to obtain a approximately $375,000 loan. We would, at that point, based on the interest rate, which I've incorporated 4.30 interest rate, it's based on a 10-year loan amortization. There will be a balloon payment after 10 years. The approximately estimated payback payment would be approximately $3,800 a month that we would be obligated to pay back the bank as part of the loan. We would actually, at that point, negotiate a separate loan agreement with the prospective purchaser and secure the property with a mortgage. Again, the ticket tax would generally, based on the pro forma, would generate $3,000 per month, leaving a deficit actually. Now, the prospective purchaser, Ms. Monty, has made it quite clear that this option is not viable for her, does not work with her business plan, something she could not pursue. I will allow her to basically outline her concerns about option two. So whether option two is a viable option based on my discussions with the prospective purchaser is questionable, at least under her proposal. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Monty to at least walk you through option one. There's actually a pro forma that she did provide us late this afternoon. If you want to distribute this to the board, I'm not sure, but at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Linda to kind of walk you through her proposal.
Thank you.
So, hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. So this is the pro forma based on the ticket tax. And I have the other pro forma that's based on the bank, but we can go through this. So this is just, an estimate pro forma based on past performance of the theater. And if we did 20,000 in ticket sales, just for movies, and we put $1 ticket tax on there, that would be 20,000 collected. And if we do special events, which we talked about in the past, doing, musicians, comedians, all different kinds of things. This is just a guesstimate of 8,000 sales. And we would put a $2 ticket tax on the special events, which would bring in $16,000. And then we have some other special things going on that we put $1 on top of. That brings in about $37,000 of ticket tax per year. Based on what he said, at $1,600 a month, I feel like, unfortunately, this business is very volatile, the movie business. So that's why we have to add special events to make it, more of a viable business. Therefore, some months in the movie business, like January, for instance, is very, very slow. So in that month, maybe there is only $1,600 repaid, but maybe the other months where it's busy, then that's where the other amounts come in and make up the deficit for the following month. When you look at it from the second scenario that he did with the bank, and they're asking only for 10 years, and it's a $4,000 payment that they're putting on top of this business. This business has been dormant for 2 years because of COVID, number one. And so this business needs a little bit time to breathe and to grow and to turn it into something dynamic for the community. And if you, out of the get-go, if you put a $4,000 payment right from the start, it will probably cripple the business because it won't have the time to really to build and generate those kind of sales. And that's why, because of the type of businesses, the unique business, it really is a difficult business to just put on top of it a large debt from the beginning. So that's really that's the sum of it. I mean, we've gone through all the ideas in the past meeting of where we want to take this business or where I want to take this business and all the ideas of the events and everything. So, and really working with the other businesses and doing a lot of cross promotions. I don't know if you guys saw the Valentine's Day promotion that we did, or if you came in and saw the decorations, or if you came in and saw what we did, but it was really well received. It was a great turnout. We did a cross promotion with Oliveri and with Something Sweet, which was, we brought business to both those businesses, which was nice. And there's so many more opportunities to do that with a lot of the businesses in the area, and really making this a destination. So people will spend more money in the restaurants, and they will spend more money in the stores because of the kind of events and things that we're going to be doing at the theater.
Thank you. Trustee Masek.
So I had a chance to talk for, I like the theater. I don't like the village owning it if something happens. I like part two of the financing. I like the 10 years. But I think we got to do some due diligence. Mr. Downing should give us 5-year history, not you, him, should give us, just so we have it for the books. What did the theater do the last 5 years? There's COVID, we get that. That's why 5 years. So we have an idea what the revenues for the theater were for the last 5 years.
I have the profit and loss from 18, 19.
Yeah, because he didn't give that to the board. Second, you're the, let's say you're the dancer. We do a deal. You're the dancer. And if I was to vote on this, probably want some key man insurance and put the village as a collateral agreement. So if you get in a car accident, it's your game. We don't want to own a building. And then the village has the money to take the loan, and we're done. We could get rid of it. That would be to see those two items, get that agreement. I need to see 5 years, because to have our fiduciary responsibility, if this isn't achievable, he should have shared that with us day one. He didn't share that. I like you, I like the concept. We gotta have our constituents, because we got $41 million we gotta spend. And it just makes sense all around, and to make everybody, I don't want to get yelled at. You gave $400,000 because everybody was mad that we did it to one place, we didn't do it to another place, and you're playing favorites. But if we do things right, we're all in a better place. That makes sense. We have it all on paper, due diligence, then we're fine with everything. Because, you know, I went to the theater as a kid. It's a part of Antioch. You know, my grandson's gone there. So we just have to do it right. And he's got to share those figures with the board.
Thank you, Trustee Peterson.
And does everybody know what key man is, by the way?
Yep.
Does the rest of the board understand what that is? That's just a life insurance policy. The village would be beneficiary.
Okay. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Luthart.
I've got a million of them. I'm having a major problem with this one. I love the theater. I love everything you're talking about. I'm willing to work with you on a ticket tax. I'm willing to work with you on liquor sales. But I'm sorry, you just saw the capital improvements we need in this town, and close to $400,000. We're not a bank. And I just don't see, I don't know where this money would come from in the village. I don't know if Jim or Michael would like to answer that, where you would expect this 400,000 to come from.
We have not identified that, frankly. Staff has concerns to this. We are not there yet. We have not identified that, as I expressed to the.
That's an issue, because if we can't identify where we're going to get it,
Of course,
why are we even talking about this at this point? So the bottom line is that I just don't see this happening in the short term unless someone can show me where this money's going to come from. That's not going to take away from one of these many needed projects we have. And so I really don't have any other questions. It's just that I just don't see this as possible at this time with the information we have. So I'll
Well,
leave
I
it at that.
understand all the other projects are important as well. Obviously, those are major improvement projects. But this is also an important part of economic development for the city, because it's going to bring in a lot of people who will spend more money at restaurants and stores because of the type of events that we're going to do and bring people into the city. There's no other businesses here because this is the core part of the downtown that draw people to this town right now. And that will be that kind of business.
That's why I understand. That's why I'm willing to work with all those other options to bring in additional revenue to the theater. But until someone can show me where we have $400,000 sitting here to open our wallet and just give it to you to buy a business, I personally don't see that as a role the village should be taking at this time with so many other needs. But I'm willing to work with you on many of the other options that you've talked about to bring in additional revenue to your business if you're successful in obtaining.
Well, unfortunately, the bank is not an option, as you heard him. They're not willing. I mean, they're willing to fund it through the village, but they're not willing to fund. I mean, Tim sat with them. I sat with them. A lot of people have sat with them. It's not because of, it's been a business that's been basically shut down for a couple of years with COVID, and it doesn't really have good numbers for the past several years. And because of the uniqueness of the business, it's a very challenging business to.
I would just need to see where we're going to get it from. And that's where our team needs to come together and show me where this money's at, that we could have it to loan in the first place before we even just have that discussion. I know from our discussion that there was kind of an urgency to get this done quickly. And that's where I'm having an issue with it. I don't think we're at a stage where we can sit there and say, we're ready to do this today, or at least I'm not. So.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Bourbon.
No questions or comments.
Trustee Dominiac.
Couple questions. Did you say you have a pro forma for option 2?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
I think I'm sorry, there was a pro forma that was prepared for option 2, the bank loan. I did not present that to the board because that was obviously applicants advised me that's really a non-starter from their perspective. So
Okay,
I didn't want to
thank
really focus on discussion, at least for
Sure.
this applicant.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I could just tell you, it's basically, it's what he already had said, that there would be a loan for, it's the same numbers that come, it's just a different payment schedule, right? So everything that I presented as far as sales would be the same. It's just that the amount that would be owed to the bank or for that bank loan would be more than what these numbers show. Because they're asking.
Maybe, Michael, at some point, we can get a copy of what you have there, and that'll help me to understand this better. And then,
They only had a 10-year, so that brought the payments higher, and then they had a double the interest rate, so shorter term and a higher interest
Got
rate.
okay,
Could
Thank
cripple the
you.
business, it's not me, it's just anybody that would take that if they had that kind of program, it would need a lot of, and the business needs time to really build. And like I said, it's.
you don't
run
think
into-
there's pent up demand? The people are like anxious to get out of the house and go to the movies? I mean, that's the flip side for me. I'm not saying that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just
Well, the
saying that-
problem is, it's not just the pent up demand, it's that the movie studios have had movies that have been
Right.
on the shelf, so what they're doing is they're streaming them. And so they're coming out with great movies that are gonna be run, but they're also running it streaming, at the same time. So
Right.
it's taking away a lot of the sales. Or they're still playing catch up and they're not producing as many movies or releasing them as quickly because they don't know if the people are all gonna come to the movie right away. So
Yeah, it's a
it's
tumultuous time.
recovering, but a bank loan is going to be day one that payment is due. There's no mercy for allowing this business to recover. And that's,
So my other question is, you're saying 1% for movies and 2%?
well, it's $1 and $2. I don't know
Okay.
why it's $1 and $2. So it's $1 ticket tax per movie and $2 for special events. Now we can raise that a little bit if we needed to as well, but at the $1,600 payment schedule, according to this pro forma, I think that we can, make double payments.
So if memory serves me correctly, and I'm not sure if I'm right on this, I think when we negotiated with Mr. Downey several years ago for the theater, he had a personal guarantee. Are you going to personally guarantee this loan?
Well, what I thought it was gonna be the building, because there's a collateral.
We
it's
don't-
gonna be the building.
I mean, I agree with one of my colleagues who indicated that we don't really want to own a building. So what I'm hearing you say is that. you
Well, I
would
can't
personally-
personally guarantee it for $375,000, because otherwise I would. Get in the wrong.
Are you willing to personally guarantee any of it?
Maybe some of it, yeah. And also, I might be able to come up with a little bit more money as well.
Well, I'm not ready to commit at this point. I'd like to just kind of see what that looks like and just better understand it. I understand where you're coming from, but I'd like to better.
No, of course.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? So we'll keep this moving forward and Michael, I guess, Zeta have conversations too. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a facade grant request for property at 425 Lake Street, and that's also Mr. Garrigan.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This matter comes before you. This is actually our first facade grant for the year of 2022. The applicant, Mr. Bellucci, is requesting a facade grant for the building commonly known as 425 Lake Street. The applicant is seeking approximately $29,000 facade grant, which would be a little less than half of a proposed almost $59,000 new investment. As you recall, a year ago, the applicant renovated the old Chase Bank building, and the applicant is proposing as part of second phase of this project. There's an existing retail building just to the north of the old Chase building, or the family medical building now. The applicant is now seeking to proceed with renovations of this building. Again, approximately $59,000 investment. They, as outlined in the proposed facade grant, they're requesting to start work hopefully in April of this year and would hopefully complete the project in June of 2022. As you all know, back in 2016, we adopted downtown facade guidelines, which generally targets certain areas along Main Street, Lake Street, generally. So this proposed applicant site is generally adjacent to it. It's just a little bit west of Victoria Street, but generally clearly on Lake Street. One of the identified goals of the facade program is, again, to promote historic restorations. This building is not historic per se. The proposed additions would be at least consistent with what the general perceptions are as it relates to the renovations of the old Chase building, would be an improvement to the current conditions of this building. As identified, and you can see here, this is the current condition of the property. Generally a fairly utilitarian structure. At one point, it had a number of vacancies, but I think the applicant has done a number of jobs in regards to getting new occupants, and the building has a number of commercial occupants right now as we speak. So what the applicant's proposing is to basically incorporate a wainscot of stone along the elevation, off-floor elevation. I did incorporate, I took the liberty to incorporate the color elevation. Go to the next slide. Yeah, actually, unfortunately, the architectural black and white didn't particularly show up very well, so I just did a real quick sketch up, which gives you a general concept of what the applicant's proposing to do. Again, to incorporate and maintain the existing brick, but then incorporate a wainscot of stone on all four elevations. So again, these proposed improvements would come to almost, again, a total of $29,000 request. The facade grant would be almost a $59,000 investment in our downtown. Again, while the building's not historic, it's really up to the village board to determine whether this complies with the village's facade grant guidelines. And with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Basic?
We missed it on the first part. Not in the building, first part, beautiful, score to 1. He's got retail in this part of the building. He's got, I think there's 3 retail that he's got in this back building. He's got open space for 2 more, so this is well deserved for what he did for the first one that we missed.
Thank you. Trustee Peterson?
I know you say that the building isn't historic. No, it's not as old as the old State Bank building downtown, but it's historic to Antioch. It's been here a long time. It was built as a savings and loan. And at the time, it was a new modern building when they put it up. It means a lot to the people that live here. And when he redid this building, everyone was thrilled when they saw this old modern building become dilapidated, and he put a new face on it. And it's attractive. It's in our main corridor coming into town. I know that I wasn't on the board. I know that the Limerick got a facade grant, and I just don't understand why the Limerick can get one and Jason's not going to get this for his building when he did so much. When you drive into Antioch on Lake Street, it's beautiful. It might not be everyone's taste, but it looks 110% better than what it did. And if he could make the back look as good, I'm all for this. I'm all for this.
Right.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Trustee Bluthart?
Just one point, really no questions, just that I think we need to make sure that we decide these grants and things like that based on the proposal in hand, not because someone didn't get something in the past. Now, I understand everyone's points about that, but we need to look at each project as it stands in itself, not as a makeup for something that was missed. That being said, I agree with everything you said, that building does look very nice, and I wasn't on the board when that happened, and I don't know everything that went on at that time, but I just want to make sure that when we go to vote on something like this, that we're looking at the proposal, not trying to make up for something that happened in the past. That's all.
All right, thank you, trustee Berman.
I agree with trustee Masek and trustee Peterson.
Thank you, trustee Dominiac.
I believe that these facade grants are for historic, and I certainly can appreciate trustee Peterson's comments. I've lived here for 25 years. I guess not as long as some other members of the board, and that building doesn't have anything for me. I don't even know if you can see it from Lake Street or Toff Street because it's so invisible to me, but that's just me. I don't support this. I think that $29,000 is money that we need for other projects. I don't think it fits the guidelines, and I just don't think that's how we should be spending this money.
Right, thank you.
Once around.
We went once around, we go once around, one more.
Well, the comment was made. I just want to make it clear. If I was going to go backwards, we'd be giving them more money than $29,000. So that's not the case. Okay. The heating and air place that was scored higher, which I still don't understand the scoring. Still don't understand the scoring. Okay. That was scored based off of sales tax, but they don't get sales tax. They buy their parts from Glenview, North, and that's a pass-through tax. There's no sales tax generated in that place. They were scored higher than that original front part building, and that was scored a 1. So I still, and Trina's asked, I've asked, I don't know whoever else asked the scoring. Now you can clearly see this from Lake Street. You can clearly see this from Toff. This building is so visible, so it just blows my mind that someone's willing to spend kind of money to make Antioch a beautiful place. This building, Home Savings and Loans, been here for how long? 50 years? That's longer?
Maybe longer.
Yeah. So to say this isn't a historical building, absolutely 100% wrong. His kid, unfortunately, he killed himself when he lived at the golf course. I was the paramedic on the call. So to sit there and say, this is, I still don't understand the scoring. So to say, we should be getting more money, but we're not going backwards. And to sit there and you say, I can't see this I can see this when I drive down Lake Street. I can see this when I'm driving down Toff. I can see it when I'm from Orchard. You can see this building. It's a visible building. It just, unless you're driving, I don't even want to say no.
Okay, all right, trustee Peterson.
No, I think I made my
All right,
point.
trustee Bluthart.
First of all, I never said you couldn't see the building. That was another trustee, since you were looking at me when you were making those comments. And what I'm getting at, trustee Masek, is that we can't keep looking back on what past boards did and try to use those for justification for new projects. Never once said anything about this project being a yes or a no, and I actually support it. And you assume that I was a no because of what I said. All I'm saying is that when we look at these projects and facade grants and anything else, we need to look at the project at hand, not trying to make up for something a past board did or did not do. That's all I'll say.
Trustee Berman.
No other comments.
Trustee Dominiac.
Yeah, the only other comment that I want to make is that we last meeting, I think it was last meeting, approved a Lakota project looking at how to revitalize downtown and what are we going to do with Toff Street. And Toff Street is so ripe for development that should we be spending this kind of money? I had the same argument when I voted against giving the money to Command. And I think my record shows that I'm firmly behind this is for historic facades and was designed by and approved by the previous board to be really focused on Lake Street and Main Street. So I guess I'm also hesitant to award this kind of money to a building that has limited visibility and is in an area that potentially is going to be redeveloped anyway.
All right, so like consensus to move this to the next board meeting, or is it, it's not on the agenda? Okay, yeah,
It is.
it is.
No?
We're moving it to the next board.
It's not on the regular board.
I didn't see it on the regular board agenda for action, so we're gonna make sure that this is, on the next board agenda for action for approval.
Okay.
Or the vote. Okay?
Yeah.
And we could have some discussion at the end of the meeting about the next board meeting with some of this business, so. All right, so we'll move that to the next board meeting. The next item on the agenda is consideration and approval for an ordinance adding one more Class A and A1 restaurant and liquor license for Casa Ruiz located at 934 Main Street and prorating fees. Okay, it's Jim, is the applicant on Zoom by any chance? Okay, thank you. Michelle, you need to unmute, and they can see you on Zoom, but we can't hear you. Yeah, she's having difficulty. I'll have Lori, the clerk, give an overview of her liquor license request because it's on the agenda for the regular meeting, I see.
So, the owner of Casa Ruiz, the Mexican restaurant at Main and Lake, has come to the village board asking for a Class A and A1 restaurant, full-service liquor license for their business. This is not a location that had a previous liquor license, like the past licenses we put on the regular board agenda because it was a change in corporate ownership. This is a brand-new license, so it's up to the board on whether or not they'd like to issue that license to her for that purpose.
Any discussion regarding this application? It's up for a vote on the regular business agenda.
Well, prior to that, the Walt had a liquor license.
Like this particular business.
Yep.
This particular business, the location, the two
Okay.
prior to that, Walt did.
Anything from any other trustees?
Just what
questions?
defines the outdoor? Is there intention to put a beer garden or something like that out there?
She's asking for that at this time, but it won't be approved until we get a drawing showing,
Okay.
that there's adequate parking and walkability on the sidewalk.
Okay.
She just wants that option to add it later.
All right, well, we don't have to move it to the next meeting because it's already there, so we can move on to the next thing. Other business before we adjourn, I will raise this thought for the trustees, is that because of different schedules, we canceled the March 23rd meeting. If there is business, some of the items that we discussed tonight that we feel we don't need to wait till middle of April to work on, we can, based on schedules, potentially schedule a special meeting for the 30th of March if we think that's appropriate, but we can have that discussion and with the trustees. Okay. Any other business for the committee of the whole meeting? Not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion trustee Dominiac,
Second.
second trustee Peterson. Roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Miniac.
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 8:23. We'll resume, or 8:24. We'll resume at 9 p.m. Jeez, at 8:30. All right.
Where is that?
I will call the meeting to order at 8:32. Roll call, please.
Trustee Mason,
Here.
trustee Peterson,
Here.
trustee Luther,
Here.
trustee Berman,
Here.
trustee Dominiac,
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Present. No one attending remotely. We have the mayoral report. Before I do my little present my resolution. I'm going to ask Chief Gutchow to come up. He was wanted to address the board on a matter that should have been through the acknowledgements earlier. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't take too many minutes here. Just since there's not another meeting in March, I wanted to take an opportunity just acknowledge that this is National Women's History Month. So as you know, March is celebrated nationally as Women's History Month, where we commemorate the vital role women have throughout American history. As such, it seemed like it was the perfect opportunity to take a few moments to highlight the contributions that the sworn men and women police officers have made in our own department. Probably comes as no surprise, but nationally, women account for a small but growing percentage of police officers. Currently, the national average for sworn women in police departments is approximately 13%, up from just 3% in the 1970s. Within our own department, we recognize the benefits of recruiting, training, and promoting female officers, and I'm proud to report to you this evening that our department exceeds the national average by roughly 5%. We currently employ 5 women police officers, with 40% of those women currently assigned to critical operational leadership roles within the department. For example, in 2021, I was proud to promote Audrey Bonorati to the rank of sergeant, and she is currently serving as our first female officer in our department's history to lead the criminal investigation section. I'd also like to highlight Detective Courtney Nemec, who became our high school resource officer last year, and she's the first woman officer ever to serve in this capacity in our department as well. Each of these roles is not only critically important to our operations, but they also have tremendous impacts on the overall level of community safety. I'd also like to point out in the last that our department has recruited and hired 3 additional female police officers in the last 16 months alone. I look forward to continuing our momentum toward creating a more balanced workforce, and I would like to extend my thanks to the board for their continued support in our efforts toward increased diversification within our ranks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, next item on the regular meeting is consideration and approval of a resolution appointing Tim Evans to the position of Deputy Liquor Control Commissioner, resolution number 22-15. We did put out a posting for this position. We had 5 or 6 applicants. We did do the interviews. Mr. Evans, who I have known from my law practice for a while, his background is he is a former police officer, a former prosecutor. He is currently in private practice and is the adjudication officer for several towns. Neighboring villages. I know, you know,
I know Zion, I believe Round Lake,
Yeah.
and Fox Lake. Yes.
so, and he's handled liquor complaints. I also found it very important to pick somebody that didn't have any connection to any of the local bar or restaurant owners, which is the reason I am, I guess, conflicted out on this position if we have hearings. So any questions for me or for, I guess, Jimmy knows of Mr. Evans. He couldn't make it tonight. I just spoke to him on Friday, but he said he would accept this position. And I told him for a payment, we would negotiate. The board could discuss a per hearing or hourly basis payment when needed. I believe that in the last administration, there may have never been many or maybe one liquor commission hearing. So this is not a job that we anticipate there's going to be a lot of activity, but very important when we do have somebody come up.
Do we need to approve the pay before we approve the person, or is that not required?
No, because you can do it like the police commission.
And we did, and we can circulate. I did, Lori was gracious enough to get a list of surrounding towns that have deputy liquor commissioners and what they pay them annually. I think the highest was $2,500 or something in that range, and it went down to hourly for hearings. So that's
I don't have a problem with that. I just was curious if we needed to approve the pay before we approve the position.
No, we do not need to approve the pay schedule before we approve.
Okay.
right. Any
We
discussion
already
or question?
approved the position
Well, not
through the
the- yeah.
ordinance.
Right,
We're
yeah.
gonna approve the person.
Created
person.
the position. Now we approve the appointment through this resolution, and the pay schedule can come on. at a later time.
Any discussion, questions?
He would have no civil recusal situations.
No.
I'll make him,
Oh, I
I'll
need
make
a motion.
motion to approve.
Motion trustee
Second.
Bluthart, second trustee Dominiac. Discussion, roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. There are 3 items. Do any of the trustees?
Citizens wishing-
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have someone here. that
Yes,
wants to
citizens wishing to address the board. Sorry. Mike.
Pass this down to the mayor, please.
All right, so this is not regarding any specific agenda item tonight, correct? Okay. All right. State your name for the record and 3 to 5 minutes for the presentation. All right, thank you.
So my name is Michael Mara. I'm in Oakwood Knolls. Most of you know me. I'm here on behalf of concerned parents and residents throughout the village to discuss the ongoing battles with Antioch School Districts 117 and 34. Its board members and its administration over the provocative curriculum and pornographic reading materials in the libraries. Some of you know one of the local parent groups consisting of over 400 parents and residents from the village and surrounding areas has been trying to remove this disturbing material from our school libraries. Let me be very clear about our request. It is not because we do not support freedom of choice or desire to attack the LGBTQ community in any way. We strongly believe in choices, but we do not agree with the distribution of pornography or the normalization of pedophilia. We have asked our school boards to remove this type of material, but have received pushback and refusals. Before you is just a small number of graphic illustrations within several books we requested to be removed. I won't read the captions, and I'll save the village the embarrassment of what we're allowing in our schools. You can all read it. It's very graphic and it's disgusting. It has no place in our schools or in our community. I'm sure you will all agree this or any type of perversion should not be in our schools. Even in our own public library, this material is only available for adults. It is not the case in our schools. Why? We understand there are separations between schools and local governments. However, at this point, we see no other alternative but to come to you tonight to help in protecting our children, our grandchildren, and our community. For months, this board and administration has been working on a new branding and developments to turn this village into a fantastic new hub filled with new businesses, family attractions. That's exactly what we heard tonight. That's what we're all in favor of. Do we really want to have all of that overlooked by being the community that allows porn to be shared with our children in our schools? It is incumbent upon this board to help protect our children and grandchildren from this perversion. We just ask that you let your voices be heard within our community.
Thank you. Now, time for the consent agenda. Is there anybody else on Zoom? Sorry, Jim. Okay, thank you. Any trustees wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion trustee Dominiac, second trustee Bluthart. Roll call, please.
Mason, Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the regular business agenda is consideration and approval of payments of accounts payable as prepared by staff in the amount of $1,269,155.64. Entertain a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion trustee Peterson,
Second.
second trustee Dominiac. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson, Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of a resolution authorizing the 2020 Chamber of Commerce events, resolution number 22-18. I see Barbara Porch is here. I'd entertain a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion trustee Peterson,
Second.
second trustee Dominiac. Discussion regarding this matter. Anybody on this side? Nope. Any discussion on this side? All right, if not, roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of section 4-2B-10 of the Village of Antioch Code, removing the prohibition against video gaming at the premises of a Class C liquor license holder during expanded sampling events, ordinance number.
No, you skipped 6.
All right, thank you. Consider back to number 6 on the agenda. Consideration and approval of an ordinance adding one more Class A and A1 restaurant liquor license for Casa Ruiz located at 934 Main Street and prorating fees, ordinance number 22-03-16. Entertain a motion and a second waiving the second reading.
So moved. Waiting a second.
Motion trustee
Second.
Dominiac waiving the second reading, second by trustee Luther waiving the second reading. Any discussion on this matter? Trustee Dominiac.
I have a question for the attorney. Are there any guidelines or statutes that define when a trustee should recuse him or herself for a vote?
If they're financially interested, then they need to recuse themselves.
Okay,
If there's a pecuniary interest, or obviously if there is the appearance or, a person votes on their conscience. So if they feel that they should recuse themselves at all times, then they should recuse themselves. But if they have a pecuniary interest or financial interest, they should recuse themselves.
okay. I'm asking a question because in the minutes that we approved earlier tonight in the committee of the whole, it was suggested by trustee Masek that any trustee that opposes regulating entertainment should recuse himself from every liquor license vote. So I just want to make sure that I'm not gonna, because I'm gonna, not this particular one, but in any liquor license vote, that if I were to vote against it, that I should recuse myself.
Not what I said, just in my words.
No, I'm just reading what it says in the minutes that we
Well, that's
approved
not what-
tonight.
That's not what I said.
Well, we approved them tonight,
Well,
so.
that's not what I said. I didn't say that. You want me to say what I said?
Anyway, thank you
Let's-
for the
let's-
clarity,
Hold on.
attorney.
Okay, can I have the floor now, please?
We will go around one time to the trustees,
Holy cow.
but let's keep it on topic for this.
Well, we're gonna keep it on
liquor license.
topic.
All right,
The topic is Super Bowl flyer in my mailbox about gambling. She hammered gambling and took it a public safety issue. Okay, public safety gambling is not an issue. It's not a public safety issue. And I said specifically, if you're going to make gambling a public safety issue, a mental state, is alcohol is a gateway drug. You should recuse yourself on every alcohol vote there is. If you're going to take it as a stance of no gambling in Antioch, when you're superseding what the state finds legal, the federal government finds legal, same with alcohol, but she constantly hammers gaming, which it's a legal function. And she's trying to supersede what is legal.
okay. Well, I think what we'll have to, to rein in is that, obviously with any trustee,
She
I would,
can
I would,
have
I would,
her
I would, I would, I would, yeah, everyone can have their
Don't
opinion.
change my
I would also, put it upon every trustee to use their best judgment on when they should recuse themselves and when not, and not direct others when they should.
I do
They
not
should
have a
recuse
financial
themselves.
interest, so.
Okay.
Please.
So
Thank you.
if there's any other discussion on this matter, otherwise let's vote on this matter and move to a gaming matter. So let's go to, let's roll call please on this one.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of an ordinance amending section 4-2B-10 of the Antioch Village Code, removing the prohibition against video gaming at the premises of a Class C liquor license holder during expanded sampling events, ordinance number 22-03-17. I'd entertain a motion in a second, waiving the second reading.
So moved, waiving the second.
Motion trustee Bluthart,
Second.
second trustee Peterson. Discussion. Trustee Mason. Trustee Peterson.
No, no discussion.
Trustee Bluthart.
No discussion.
Trustee Berman.
No discussion.
Trustee Dominiac.
No discussion.
All right, roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
No.
4 voting yes, 1 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, consideration and approval of an ordinance amending section 4-2C-14 of the Antioch Village Code, decreasing the minimum age for selling packaged alcoholic liquors in certain licensed premises from the age of 21 years of age to the age of 18 years. Ordinance number 22-03-18. I'll entertain a motion and a second, waiving the second reading.
So moved.
Motion trustee Masek,
Second.
second trustee Bluthart. Discussion, trustee Masek.
We just went through it with a couple discussions with the work environment. We went through with our own study, how it's hard to find employees. These guys got the same problems. So, and they've got the same laws to follow, so it just makes sense.
Thank you, trustee Peterson.
I think with all of the safeguards in place, scanning driver's licenses, cameras overhead, I really believe that this is fine. This is fine.
Thank you, trustee Bluthart.
No comment.
Trustee Berman,
No comment.
trustee Dominiac.
I am really struggling with giving 18-year-olds who are not eligible to drink the ability to sell alcohol. I did ask someone that lives in Antioch, who's a recruiter, and who has kids that are now of age, but previously weren't. And he said the problem is, you can get more people if you pay more. And I understand that that's a potential impact on someone's profit. But he also shared with me that all the high school students know where to go to get liquor and where places that don't card. So my concern continues to be that an 18-year-old that's not supervised would be under pressure and they're not eligible to drink themselves. So I know I'm in the minority on this, but I don't support this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Not roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Nope.
All right, 4 voting yes, 1 voting no, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of a resolution supporting the efforts of the Canadian National Railroad to improve the North Central Service Corridor with the installation of a double-track rail infrastructure to enhance emergency response and reduce vehicle traffic delays in the corridor. Resolution 22-13. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion trustee Bluthart. Second, I heard
Second.
second trustee Dominiac. Roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item is consideration and approval of a resolution authorizing the village administrator to execute a contract with the Mad Bomber Firework Productions to provide annual fireworks show for the village of Antioch in 2020 for the amount of $35,000. Resolution number 22-19. Entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Motion trustee Bluthart,
Second.
second trustee Berman. For the record, Jim, I think our cost is half of that. It's split with the township, just so everybody knows. Township pays half of that cost. So any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Number 11, consideration and approval of an emergency ordinance ratifying the mayoral declaration of emergency relating to coronavirus, ordinance number 22-03-19. I'd entertain a motion in the second, waiving the second reading.
So moved.
Motion trustee Bluthart, second trustee Peterson, is that correct? Okay, roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
I'm sorry, I had a question about this. Why are we continuing to do this? I thought.
He extended it one more time, but it allows, the main thing is allows Zoom attendance
Okay,
for
yes.
meetings. That's the main part.
Thank you.
All right, 5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Last item, and I have a question about this for the village attorney.
Yes.
Since were you here on December 14th? Okay, so if there were multiple trustees who weren't here for the 20 at that time or sitting, can they still approve those
They can
minutes?
still approve the minutes. If you were not here, whether by absence or by non-election,
Okay.
you could still vote on.
Okay,
the
I just
minutes.
didn't know. I was like, I don't know how that works. Okay, so consideration approval of the December 14th, 2020 Village Board meeting minutes as presented.
So
Motion trustee Peterson.
Um,
Motion for approval.
motion for approval, but can I add that the letter from the Attorney General's office should be
You wanna say it?
attached?
I would
to it?
second that.
Yep, village attorney will address that too.
I'm going to read the letter into the record immediately afterwards. And you're asking that
For
be,
the whole rec?
I'm going to read the whole letter, and that is to avoid any editorialization or any editing or any statements. I'm just going to put the whole thing into the record.
Okay.
And that's the statement of law as set forth by Attorney General Kwame Raoul and his designee.
Okay, because it's a little confusing.
So
Sure.
Why
so
is
Good
this
is-
on? Why are we approving?
so
these?
because this was pending litigation, I believe this matter, because there was a hearing pending or investigation, the meeting minutes were held, I wouldn't say in escrow
Okay.
until there was a ruling. Since a ruling came out, we can approve the meeting minutes and attach the ruling to the minutes, read them and then close this matter. So that's
So is the proper motion then what trustee Peterson said, which is to approve the
The
minutes
minutes
with the,
including the
full letter.
including the letter. Yes.
So I would
The
second
letter
that.
will be in these sets of minutes. It'll be read in these sets of minutes. And it's referenced in.
Okay.
Correct, attorney?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Then I second.
All right. And a motion trustee Peterson, second trustee Dominiac. You read this first. And then
I-
I'll go?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just the ruling of the Attorney General that's going to be
And I apologize.
in your spot.
I lost my spot and I accidentally deleted it. It's
Here, I have
caught
the
up now.
letter.
It's caught up now.
Okay.
So I got it.
Okay.
All right, so this is dated February 22nd. One thing I will not go through all the addresses, if that's okay with everyone. February 22nd, 2022, via electronic mail to the Honorable Scott A. Pierce, Member, Board of Trustees, and the Honorable Scott J. Gartner, Mayor, both Village of Antioch, regarding OMA request for review 2020 PAC 66200. Dear Trustee Pierce and Mayor Gartner, this determination is issued pursuant to Section 3.5E of the Open Meetings Act, OMA, citations omitted. For the reasons discussed below, the Public Access Bureau concludes that the Village of Antioch Village Board of Trustees Board violated the Open Meetings Act during its December 14, 2020 meeting. On December 17, 2020, Trustee Scott Pierce submitted a request for review alleging that the board's December 14th, 2020 meeting agenda did not adequately identify the general subject matter of the board's action to find him and two other village trustees in violation of the village code of behavior and conduct for the village elected and appointed officials, the code. On December 30, 2020, this office forwarded a copy of the request for review to the board and asked it to provide a written response to the allegations together with the copies of the agenda, the meeting minutes, draft form if necessary, and a verbatim recording of the December 14th, 2020 meeting if such a recording existed. On January 26, 2021, the board submitted a written response and furnished the requested meeting materials. On the same date, this office forwarded a copy of the board's response to Trustee Pierce with an opportunity to reply. He submitted a reply on January 28, 2021. Termination. The Open Meetings Act provided that the public agencies exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business and that the intent of the act is to assure that agency actions be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted openly. Section 2.02 of the OMA provides that any agenda required under this section shall be set forth the general subject matter of any resolution or ordinance that will be the subject of final action at that meeting. The Senate debate on House Bill 4687, which was enacted as Public Act 97-827, effective January the 1st, 2013, adding Section 2.02C of the OMA indicates that the General Assembly intended this provision to ensure that agendas provide sufficiently descriptive advance notice of the matters upon which a public body anticipates taking final action. There was, and this is quoting, There was just no real requirement as to how specific the public body needed to be to the public of what they were going to discuss that would be a final action. And this just says that you have to have a general notice if you're going to have and take final action as to generally what's going to be discussed, so that people who follow their units of local government know what they're going to be acting upon. That's from Senator Dillard. Item 614 of the December 14, 2020 meeting agenda identifies the matter to be considered as discussion of retaining independent counsel due to the ethical recusal of village attorney on a matter. Trustee Pierce stated that the inclusion of this agenda item arose as a result of a complaint filed by a citizen against 3 trustees, including him, for alleged violation of the code. The draft meeting minutes and the verbatim record of the meeting document that pursuant to this agenda item, the mayor read a statement in which he notified the board of the formal complaint. Then Mr. Robert Long, the village attorney, stated that he would recuse himself from investigating the complaint, as it would be inappropriate for him as village attorney to investigate 3 of its board members. The agenda item properly identified these discussions. However, there is nothing in the wording of agenda item 414 or in any other agenda item that provided notice to the public that the board might consider the merits of the underlying complaint and take action on that complaint. The draft meeting minutes and the verbatim records show that the board heard statements from the complainant and the trustees and discussed whether 3 of the trustees violated the code. The board then considered 3 separate motions and voted to find that each of the 3 trustees violated the code. A member of the public reading the agenda before the board's December 14, 2020 meeting would not have had advance notice that the board planned to make a final determination as to whether the 3 of its trustees violated the code. The board argues that section 2.02C of the OMA requires an agenda set forth this general subject matter only of each resolution or ordinance that will be the subject of final action at the meeting, and that a mere simple motion by one trustee to call into question the behavior of 3 of his colleagues does not constitute final action. The board further argues that the board did not pass a resolution or ordinance, and that the village's ethic ordinance requires a formalized process, including a complaint, a formal hearing, and final finding, but that no such hearing was held. OMA does not define final action, and no Illinois court has precisely defined that term. Generally, however, final action can be said to occur when a vote in open session resolves the matter and stands on its own, rather than serving as an interim, non-dispositive step in a broader decision-making process. And then a citation is omitted. Board's characterization of the December 14, 2020 meeting downplays the board's actions that evening. As described above, the board not only gave lengthy consideration of the citizen complaint, but also heard a motion, accepted a second of that motion, then took a vote to approve a motion, stating that trustees violated the code. The board then repeated that procedure 2 more times for the other 2 trustees. There is no indication that this was a tentative or preliminary consensus. Each of these votes appear to have resolved the question of whether each trustee violated the code. To the extent that the presentations made during the meeting of the board's deliberation of those findings prior to its votes did not satisfy the requirement in the village code that it hold a formal hearing, the board's failure to do so does not mean that its 3 votes do not constitute final action for purposes of OMA. In arguing that its vote was not a final action, the board also emphasized that none of the trustees were censured or otherwise sanctioned as a result of its findings. However, the code does not require the imposition of sanctions for all findings of violations. Moreover, a finding that the public official violated the code is a dispositive step under the code. The lack of a consequence or penalty following that finding does not render the finding any less of a final action under OMA. Under these circumstances, this office concludes that the board violated section 2.02C of the OMA in connection with its December 14, 2020 meeting by voting to find 3 of its trustees in violation of the code without having listed the general subject matter of those actions on the meeting agenda. To remedy this violation, this office requests that the board reconsider and revote on the matter regarding the complaint after providing proper advance notice for those actions if it wishes to maintain this finding against the 3 trustees. Finally, the Public Access Counselor's authority is limited to dissolving disputes concerning OMA and the Freedom of Information Act. To the extent Trustee Pierce's request for review alleges violations of laws other than FOIA or OMA, the Public Access Counselor does not have authority to review those allegations. The Public Access Counselor has determined that that resolution of this matter does not require the issuance of a binding opinion. This file is closed. Please contact me at the number on the first page if you have any questions. Grace Angelos, Assistant Attorney General. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. So that concludes that matter. We wait for that report, and there'll be no further action on that matter at this time. It's basically a closed matter by the Attorney General and the Village Board. So in that regard,
We have to vote to approve.
we had to vote to approve those meeting minutes. So I'd ask for a roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Administrator report, anything additional? All right, thank you. Okay, village clerk's report.
no report.
Any trustee reports other than those that were received in writing?
I just have a quick question because I didn't ask it about the salary study. Jim, I'm sorry, what's the next steps in terms of implementing the results of that study? Is there a plan? Do we need to discuss it further?
I think it should come back for some more discussion. There wasn't much discussion on it, and I would like to, you know, staff, I think, should make a recommendation, or the board members themselves can make recommendations on how they could implement that plan. There are several options. It doesn't need to be done in one fell swoop, done over a few years, or I think it warrants more discussion.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank the chief for recognizing the women on his team, and also to recognize the women that work in the village, do a phenomenal job in this month of women's history. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustees? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session with no further business to take place after executive session. I believe executive session is related to property disposition. So I'd entertain a motion in a second. Motion trustee Bluthart,
Second.
second trustee Dominiac. Roll call, please.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yeah.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
5 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 9:05 PM.